The harbour, the jewel in Sydney's crown. But the sparkling deep blue waterways that twist and turn through the sprawling suburbs hide a dark secret, a toxic legacy that will haunt the city for years to come.
It might look like an urban paradise today, but 10 years ago, this was a toxic wasteland, the legacy of chemical factories that dotted the Rhodes Peninsula for most of the last century. In fact, just over the water there, Agent Orange was manufactured for the Vietnam War. The byproducts of this manufacturing process included dioxins, toxic chemicals that leached into the soil and into the waterways.
Dioxins are a family of toxic chemicals that build up in the fat of animals and humans and can remain in soil or the sea floor for decades. The World Health Organization says dioxin exposure can affect the immune and reproductive systems, cause developmental problems in children, and dioxins have been linked to several types of cancer, especially blood cancers and soft tissue tumours. Dioxins in Agent Orange caused birth defects and other health problems in hundreds of thousands of people after the Vietnam War. And in 2004, Ukrainian presidential candidate Viktor Yushchenko was severely disfigured by intentional dioxin poisoning. Dioxin contamination in Sydney Harbour can be traced back to one factory in the western Sydney suburb of Rhodes. Union Carbide Chemicals made pesticides and herbicides for much of the 20th century and was also contracted by the US military to make Agent Orange. Over many decades, waste containing dioxins was dumped onto the site and into the harbour, and the company was allowed to leave Australia in the late 1980s without any attempt to clean up. But today, the wheels of industry have been replaced by the wheels of luxury cars, as the Rhodes Peninsula is being transformed into a bustling new residential development, with sleek designer apartments springing up on every corner. But reminders of the suburb's dark past are never far away.
It was always on your back of your mind that there could have been something, but government never told us anything.
Mark Forrester is an ex-commercial fisherman who worked the harbour for 20 years. Like many other fishermen, dioxin contamination changed his life.
At the time, the chemicals in the fish, I didn't think it would be affecting the fish at all. All what happened to us, that I brought my fish into the market one morning, it was a Monday morning, and the boys asked me where did I catch the fish. I just said, why did you ask me the question? And they said Sydney Harbour's closed, and I thought, were you joking? Overnight, my life changed. It was my livelihood, I lost it.
After testing showed unsafe dioxin levels in fish in 2006, commercial fishing in Sydney Harbour was banned. Recreational fishing wasn't stopped, but fishers were warned not to eat any fish caught west of the harbour bridge and to only eat a small amount east of the bridge, the equivalent of 2 fish fingers a month. But a recent study by Dr. Luke Hedge and his team of researchers at the Sydney Institute of Marine Science has revealed a worrying trend among recreational fishers.
So we got out on the water for about 280 hours, and that encompassed a winter and a summer season. You get really intense hotspots of fishery activity. One of the big surprises that came out of this study was the fact that some of these hotspots were actually found west of the Sydney Harbour Bridge. Now, in 2006, all commercial fishing in Sydney Harbour was banned, and there were strong warnings put in place about consuming seafood caught west of the Sydney Harbour Bridge, and that was in response to elevated levels of dioxins found in some of the sediments and some of the seafood in Sydney Harbour. So to find that some of the fishing effort was still taking place in these highly contaminated areas, in fact about 40% of our fishing effort was found west of the Sydney Harbour Bridge, was quite surprising to a lot of researchers, and we certainly hope that the people weren't consuming the seafood they caught west of the Harbour Bridge, but we don't have any data on that. But it would be an interesting follow-up study.
Pier 2, just west of the Harbour Bridge, is a popular fishing spot for many Sydney-siders. But many of the people fishing here seem oblivious to the government's dietary recommendations.
Last week I've been here. I catch 4 kilo of bream.
And what did you do with it?
Eat it.
Malcolm Poole is the chairman of the Recreational Fishing Alliance of New South Wales and knows many people who continue to fish west of the Harbour Bridge.
So the question about how recreational fishing activity above the Harbour Bridge, right? And again, this is an arbitrary line that runs through the middle of the harbour. Fish don't know any boundaries. The Harbour Bridge is just an arbitrary line that says above the bridge you shouldn't take fish and take it home and consume it, and below the bridge you should have a health warning that's been issued to anglers to say only consume this amount of fish caught below the bridge. Please tell me, where the fish go to and how they move.
But Dr. Hedge says the advice given to fishers was based on scientific testing and should be strictly followed.
So the delineation east and west of the Sydney Harbour Bridge isn't an arbitrary one. It was put in place because it's such an easily recognisable landmark. But also, the dioxin testing has shown that there is this gradient of dioxin contaminant down the estuary.
We found out that in the middle of Homebush Bay, there's one hot spot worse than what the Union Carbide side is, because they used to have an old wharf and they'd just roll the barrels out and tip it in the harbour and out of mind.
Mark Forrester knew only too well that high dioxin levels in fish would mean high dioxin levels in fishermen and their families. But the state government refused to pay for blood tests despite tireless campaigning by the fishermen.
Welcome to the program.
It was only after the ABC's 7:30 report arranged for 4 people to be tested by a German laboratory and then reported on the dangerously high levels that came back that the Department of Health agreed to provide free blood tests.
I ate fish at least 2 to 3 times a week from my catches. My father-in-law, he was a prawn trawler, so in the summertime, it was tradition we were over his place for barbecues every Sunday, and we had prawns put out on the table every Sunday. This one's got for my father-in-law. I was about 4 times over the limit. My wife was about 5. My father-in-law, being a fisherman for 50 odd years, he was 37 times over the limit.
But despite media reports about toxic levels of dioxins in fishermen and their families, some recreational fishers today seem indifferent to the possible health risks they face.
Are you worried about any toxins in the fish here?
No.
I'm aware that the levels can be high, but then again I've also heard from a lot of fishermen who say they eat it every week of their life and they've never had any problems. So I think it's just a matter of don't dine out on it every night, and I'm led to believe you're allowed to have a little bit each week and it's not going to do any harm.
Some people accept the risk, some people might not know about the risk, and some people will get up and avoid the risk wherever they can because they just, that's their attitude. Dioxins were the flavour of the month, several years ago. Dioxins is just here, but this is the bigger picture we talk about.
But Dr. Hedge says it's unwise to ignore the risks posed by dioxins in Sydney Harbour.
The dioxin isn't a small issue. It has quite severe health effects at levels which you might actually get from consuming the normal amount of seafood that a Sydney fisher might collect from some of these really nasty places in Sydney Harbour. So it's definitely not a small issue, or it's definitely not an overblown issue. It is something that has significant health implications for the Sydney fishing community.
With so many people continuing to fish in the harbour, the question remains, why do they do it? Are they unaware of the advice, or do they choose to accept the risk?
I think it's the majority that doesn't know. Again, we come back to that point. Education's a really big thing. And talk about anglers. New South Wales has 1 million anglers, right? And obviously, we're in the Sydney greater region, we must probably have 500,000 anglers. All ethnicities, all different community groups. And getting to every angler is that hard part, right?
While signs are displayed in several different languages, it appears that language barriers may still be a problem. But even if you can read the signs, it's not always 100% clear, as the signage at Woolwich, a hotspot identified by Dr. Hedges' study, reveals.
On my right, a sign advising people that they should release their catch due to high levels of dioxin found in the fish in this area. On my left, a sign telling people that they can take as many as 5 yellowtail kingfish away from this site on any given day. It's no wonder people are getting confused.
The New South Wales Department of Primary Industries, which manages recreational fishing, as well as New South Wales Health and the New South Wales Food Authority, declined to comment on the issue. But after everything they've been through, commercial fishermen like Mark Forrester are frustrated by what they see as recreational fishers simply ignoring the warnings.
The recreational fishers, they know because fisheries do send patrols out, and everyone knows with what's been put in the public eyes after the campaign and that yes, the general public do know.
But it's clear that some fishers are simply happy to take the risk.
Catch something, you want to eat it, you know what I mean? I'm that type of person. If I catch something, I don't care if there's pollution or shit. I don't care about that stuff. If I'm hungry, I'm going to eat. If I want to eat fish, I'm going to eat fish. If I catch fish, I'll eat fish, you know what I mean? At the end of the day, no one really gives a crap about Well, some people do, but some people, they don't really care about the pollution side and all that other stuff.
So you don't feel concerned about your health?
Not concerned one bit. I'm not sick now. I've eaten fish from here before. I'm not sick, you know what I mean?
But for those who have been put off by the high dioxin levels in the fish, the EPA's announcement of retesting will come as good news. In December, harbour fish and sediment on the sea floor will be tested for dioxin levels for the first time in almost a decade. While some decontamination around Rhodes and Homebush Bay has been carried out over the last 10 years, most experts aren't holding their breath for levels to have dropped significantly.
So starting in the mid-2000s, there was an effort to remediate some of the sediment found in some of the highly contaminated areas of Sydney Harbour. Areas like Homebush Bay, where you had a really significant industrial presence for the past 100 years. And this was at great cost to the government. Now, we don't know as yet whether that's actually worked. The next round of sampling is due to begin any time now. We don't think that the recommendations to avoid consuming seafood will be lifted anytime soon. So even with that remediation work, there still remains substantial contamination issues in Sydney Harbour, dioxin being the main one. So it'll be interesting to see whether there is an effect of that remediation, but we're of the opinion that given the half-life, or given the tendency for dioxin to stick around for long periods of time, we don't think those recommendations will be lifted.
We don't know if the dioxins, because they haven't found any cure, and she's had it for quite a long time.
And for seasoned commercial fishermen like Mark Forrester, talk of relaxing the warnings raises alarm bells.
If our product, when we were commercially fishing, wasn't safe, it shouldn't be allowed for anyone to take it out of the harbour till they act and clean up, so it's a good environment for everyone.
While many recreational fishers continue to enjoy the spoils of our plentiful harbour, somewhat at their peril, the legacy of dioxin poisoning lives on in the families of commercial fishermen, and the authorities' interest in the problem seems to have come and gone with the tide.
After we got the results back, the government said just to go to your local GP, and then they'd monitor us from there on. And from that day, we have not been monitored at all, and no more other tests have been done. They told us that there'd be follow-up, but yeah, it's typical government. Here today, gone tomorrow. A lot of the older guys, they're slowly passing away, you know, because it's at that age, and we've lost a few through cancers, a few of the fishermen, and we don't know if the dioxins have contributed to it. You don't know.